We can see this theme running through the readings this morning, a message that reminds us to reflect on the nature of prayer, humility, and God's justice. Now, in homage to our recently deceased Father Joseph, I want to share a story with you, since he likewise would start his homilies with a story or a joke. See, there were these three clergymen, and they were in deep discussion about the best position for praying. And it just so happened there was this telephone repairman that was nearby and overheard their conversation. Well, the first clergyman started out with, "Kneeling is definitely the best." And the second one said, "No, I get the best results standing with my arms outreached to heaven." And the third said, "You're both wrong. The best way is to prostrate yourself on the floor with your face to the floor." And the telephone repairman, he could no longer stand their conversation, and he butted in. He said, "Guys, the best way I ever prayed was hanging upside down from a telephone pole." All of the readings are calling us this morning to examine our hearts and our attitudes, especially in how we cultivate our relationship with God and with one another through prayer and through humility, all the while knowing that one day we will stand before the Lord in His justice. We heard in the first reading from Sirach that God has no partiality toward any particular persons or groups, has no favorites. But He did say that He listens more closely to the cries of the oppressed and does not overlook the prayers of the humble and the poor. He proclaims that the Lord is a God of justice. He judges justly and affirms the right. We're reminded that God is not swayed by external appearances or social status. Doesn't matter how many likes, hits, or views we have. It's about how we go about serving God willingly. Sirach emphasizes that everyone's prayers do reach God, regardless of who we are. But again, He especially hears the prayers of the poor and the downtrodden. Our responsorial psalm echoed this same sentiment. It said that we are, or the poor are, closer. The brokenhearted are seen more in the eyes of God. See, God saves those who are crushed in spirit. Again, reminding us that God's attention is drawn to those who really seek Him with a sincerity of heart. As we listen to St. Paul reflecting upon his own life, his own life's journey, he encourages Timothy and us to remain steadfast in our faith. In his closing words, if you listen closely, you can hear his sense of peace and hope. He's confident that God will deliver him from every evil attack and bring him safely to the heavenly kingdom. It's particularly important to notice that St. Paul, well, he does not come across as prideful or boastful in his situation. He comes from a deep, abiding humility and full knowledge that he is relying on God and God's grace. Our gospel reading, we could say, is the icing on top. From the mouth of Jesus Himself, we hear the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. We need to realize that the Pharisees were not bad people, maybe a little overzealous, but we need to understand that they were born out of a group of lay people, and they formed into a distinct religious movement. And they were trying to counter the growing departure from Judaism. They were countering the Greek and Roman influences on the Sadducees who had Well, they had developed Hellenistic religious, social, and governmental viewpoints. The Pharisees, in fact, are accredited with keeping a much more faith-filled and traditional view of Judaism. We also need to know that the tax collectors of that time were just that. They were civil servants. They were tasked with collecting the governmental tax, and it just so happened they had to do it from their own people. That made them, in a sense, turncoats, a traitor. Their pay, well, it came from the overage of taxes that they collected, so it was not uncommon that they took a little more to line their own pockets, a form of extortion. Now, this guy, he was not very popular. In fact, the community of the time would have put the moniker on him of sinner. They would have called him that to his face and in the open. In the parable, we hear the Pharisee speak, and he speaks about himself. He is filled with self-righteousness, even as he prays. We can hear him drowning in his proclamation of eyes. Thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity. I am not greedy. I am not dishonest. I am not adulterous. I am not like this tax collector. I fast. I pay tithes. All eyes. He has put himself above everyone else, not just the tax collector. And he is praising himself and not praising God. He is not praising the goodness and mercy. He has not even recognized or even slightly appreciated God's grace and mercy. Now, he has followed the laws, but he has not opened his heart. He has not opened it to the plight of others. He has raised himself up above others, and he thinks his position and knowledge puts him on a fast track to salvation. And while it may be easy for us to kind of laugh at his selfishness as the hypocrite that he may be, before we start feeling like our own prayer life is better than that man, than that Pharisee, let's remember this parable is meant to be a teaching moment for us all. It's a moment where Jesus essentially entraps his audience. Since it's a parable about feeling superior, all of a sudden we might feel like we're better than that Pharisee. If we do that, then we've lost all of our humility. Now, Jesus describes the tax collector as truly meek and humble, that he could not even raise his head to look toward heaven. His heart is truly broken, and he is ashamed of his sinful behaviors. He recognizes that only God can provide his salvation, and he beats his chest and pleads for God's mercy. Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. It's in that moment, that very moment, that the tax collector shows true humility. True humility is not thinking less of ourselves. It's about thinking of ourselves less. It's not having low self-esteem. It's about being aware of others. This tax collector has come to understand the oppression he has cast upon his community and how his actions have been unpleasing to God. And he seeks to restore that relationship with God. And where does he start? With prayer. A prayer filled with humility. He also has an understanding of the judgment that will come, and it will come, but from the Lord and the Lord alone. This morning, we're being asked to examine our hearts. These sacred words of Scripture are asking us, how is our relationship with God? Do we have a healthy prayer life? Are we approaching God with a spirit of humility? Do we recognize our dependence on God? Do we cling to our own sense of righteousness or superiority, or do we see how we potentially oppress others, and do we genuinely seek out God and ask for His mercy? May we all remember the prayer of that tax collector. Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner.